Hi everyone! Congratulations for making it to the end of the first week of the 4-week Bach challenge. Congratulations to you and also to me, frankly. I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk a little bit more about fugue and some of the more advanced techniques that Bach sometimes uses in fugue. The fugue that we have for today, the D minor, has some really interesting examples of things that he can do. So let's go over to the keyboard and let's take a look at it together. Okay, so here we are. So if you haven't already watched my video on the introduction to fugue, go do that. Watch it a few times. Really get it in your bones. So just a reminder that a fugue always begins with the subject by itself. Let me play the beginning of this fugue so we can get a listen to it. So that's a good place to stop. So again, when you're listening to the subject, I encourage you to be as concrete in your thinking as you possibly can. So like the C major fugue, this is a subject which is divided neatly into two parts. So there's kind of a flurry of activity at the beginning. And then there's this long, sinuous, chromatic descending line. Kind of sexy. Bach really likes his chromatic lines. It's something that he uses a lot. This is, again, I mean, all of Bach's fugue subjects are fantastic, but this one is a really great subject because it shows, it has such great variety in both of its parts, and it's really recognizable. Let's keep going on. I'll call out the entrances as they happen, so just watch out for them. Second entrance. Third entrance. So fairly standard. It enters middle voice first, alto, then the top voice, soprano, and then the bottom voice, bass, which, if I remember correctly, is the same thing that happens in the C major fugue. One thing that's different about this one than the C major fugue is that the first voice enters, then the second voice enters, then there's a little bit of a delay. There's some connective material before the third voice enters. So I just want you to notice that. I'll call out when the connective material happens, but just notice that there's a little bit of a period, a little bit of a delay before the final entrance of the subject. The connective material, and then the third voice. I only point that out just because it's quite common in Bach's fugues for there to be a delay before the third voice. In his 3-voice fugues, there's quite often a delay before the third voice happens. And in his 4-voice fugues, the delay often happens in the same place. So voice 1, voice 2, a little bit of connecting material, and then voice 3 and voice 4. It's not set in stone. Sometimes they all enter at the same time. One right after the other. Sometimes in a 4-voice fugue, the delay is after voice 3. There's some flexibility to it, but it's just something to know that might happen. I'd like to keep going onward, so remember the next thing that happens after all the voices in is after the voices are in, we get a little episode, so a section where we don't hear the subject at all, and then we wait for the next entrance of the subject. So I'm going to start from where the third voice enters, and then we're going to go into the episode, and I want you to see if you can spot when the subject comes back. So hopefully you heard that it was in the soprano there at the end. I'll play it again just so you can hear it. But if you were paying really close attention, you'll see that there is a spot where Bach fakes us out. And that's something he does a lot. And I think it's partly out of a sense of play, a sense of intellectual play with the listener. He's like, oh, is this a subject? Oh, it's over here. So you have to be careful because he's a sneaky guy sometimes. Let me point out exactly where that happens, and then I'll play the real entrance, and then we'll keep going, and we'll get to the really cool stuff in just a minute. Fake entrance, and then the real entrance. Now this is where things get really cool. So I just want you to take a listen to it. Don't stress about it. Don't worry about why it's cool. Just accept that it is, and just take a listen. Wow, so cool. But why, Joe? Well, I'll tell you. So first, listen. I want you to just listen to the middle voice. I'm going to play the middle voice and a little bit of accompaniment from the lower voice. So just listen to that. Nothing too outrageous, right? It's just the subject, and then the bass is just kind of doing something else. I now want you to listen to the top voice. So there's going to be 6 notes which are not the subject, and that's going to be followed immediately by the subject. Okay, still just the subject. Now, I'd like you to listen to the top 2 voices together and notice what happens. So they both do the subject, but they crowd over each other. So this top voice enters with the subject before the middle voice is even finished. So usually in a fugue, when a voice does the subject, it gets to the end before the next one comes in. So something like this, for example. So something nice and polite like this. But these, they actually crowd over each other. Listen to it one more time. So the technical term for that is stretto. It's Italian for crowding. And it's an effect that dazzles the ear. It makes it very hard to tell where to pay attention to. Bach is one of the greatest masters of stretto. He can do strettos in 3, 4 parts. There's one in book 1 of the Well-Tempered Clavier where he's got a 5-part stretto. No 5-part strettos in this thing, but it's a really spectacular effect. I'd like you to listen to it in context now, and I'd like to keep going, and there's one more thing I'd like to point out to you. So this is the measure before the stretto happens. Here's the stretto. He's got one more trick up his sleeve. Listen to that entrance. So what is different about it? Listen to the original version of the subject. So this version is upside down. We call that inversion is the technical term, or upside down. Listen to the upside down version. Very cool. Very cool. A lot of the fugues in Book 2 of the Well-Tempered Clavier will flip the subject like that. It's like a whole different perspective on the subject. One of the viewers asked, how can I learn to recognize when something is flipped or when it's inverted without me telling you? The short answer to that is it's tricky and it's something that'll come with practice. But one thing I listen for if I'm looking for inversion is I look for something that's distinctive about it, and then if it's moving in the opposite direction, then I know it's inverted. So to put it more simply, in this subject, for example, we have that long descent. So I know that if there's ascending chromatic line, that's probably an inversion. So that ascending thing right there is going to tip me off to inversion. In real life, if I'm listening to this, the scurrying part might go past me without me noticing that it's an inversion, but that rising chromatic line is definitely going to get my attention. So thank you for watching. I hope that this is helpful to you. I hope that you're enjoying this project and enjoying listening to this beautiful music. If you like this, I would encourage you to hit like, should be down like here in this area somewhere, and subscribe. It helps me out. And feel free to comment, ask questions, let me know if there's anything I can clarify or anything I can do to increase your enjoyment of the music. I love talking about Bach, and I love helping it to be more understandable. I think it's just amazing music, and I don't think there's any reason to feel intimidated when listening to it. So thank you again for listening, and I hope you'll go listen to the Prelude and Fugue in D minor.